This is the January 17th, 2024 meeting of the California Unemployment Appeals Board. And I'll open the session. We'll begin the session by the instructions I always give to folks in the room and to our audience. The board will accept public comment on any agenda item or any other matter under its jurisdiction. Speakers are asked to limit their testimony to approximately 5 minutes on each agenda item and on any other matter under its jurisdiction not listed on the agenda. The order of the agenda may be changed to accommodate the board or the public. With that, I'll begin the roll call. Michael Allen, Chair, present. Laura Kent-Monning.
Present.
Mike Ng.
Present.
Robert Wykowski.
Here.
Thank you, members. So the next thing on our agenda after the roll call is the approval of the minutes. So I would entertain a motion to approve the minutes of our December 14th meeting.
So moved, Mr. Chair.
We have a motion. Do we have a second?
A second.
So all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. So we have unanimous adoption of our minutes. With the chair report, first of all, it is a new year, and my thoughts are that as being on this board for a very long time, I remember that it took us quite a number of years to work our way out of the Great Recession, and we're still dealing with the hangover from the pandemic, the outcome of so many folks needing assistance, and we're doing very well in making progress toward getting our inventory of cases, our caseloads, more manageable. And just to give some hope to the board members who are here is that after a couple of years, we had many years of being basically in total compliance with what was expected of us from the federal government. But it took a while to get there. So I just wanted to let the board members and the public and the staff know that we're getting there. We just have to keep on our heads down, working hard, and we'll eventually be in compliance with the fact that we're the largest state in the union. We have the largest system, and we're working our way well through it. So I will report that the majority or almost all of our work is done on our cases between meetings. We closed out 1,159 cases this past month, and I want to thank the board members for that. And 578 of those were in CAMs. And we're slowly closing out our inventory of our legacy cases with the system that has been used for many years. So having said that, I just want to welcome the board members, the public who might be watching, our staff, and just thank everyone for basically, in my opinion, functioning very well together under difficult circumstances as we work our way through a very large caseload. So that concludes my chair report, and I'll turn it over to any board members for their reports.
Thank you, Chair Allen. I just wanted to convey some appreciation from events I was able to attend between the last board meeting and now. Member Wykowski and I were able to join for a portion of the Bay Area CAMS training a few weeks back, mid-December. And I just am so impressed with that training team. You know, this was the last office that they transitioned into CAMS, and it's getting into holiday time. The weather was terrible. People were driving from far away. And there was so much positivity and hard work being done, and these ALJs were just, totally prepared, ready to get on. Bob and I were able to have our computers, and it's I think really it's really informative to see how different levels of our agency, all different jobs, are using this interface to perform their portion of the work that we do. So I just wanted to extend my tremendous thanks and appreciation and recognition for the CAMS training team that made that final push before the end of 2023. Very impressive. And I also wanted to thank our IT team for the rollout of a much improved board member user interface for the way that we do our cases on CAMS. I really have been enjoying that and thinking that it has enabled us to communicate with each other much more efficiently when we do our work. So those were the two things that I wanted to show my appreciation for, and also just wanted to highlight for the month of December in the field, our agency closed almost 28,000 cases, and that's a month of the year where a lot of people take time off. So I was very impressed with that number, and as you said, Chair Allen, the work is being done, the hard work is being done, and those numbers are showing it. So hoping that that's indicative of a good 2024 and reaching our compliance as soon as we can. Thank you.
Thank you. Member Ng.
Oh, thank you, Mr. Chair. I have nothing specific to report, but also adding to what's been said by my colleagues to really express my gratitude to my colleagues and the entire CUIAB team for successful completion of CAMs into all of the offices throughout the state. I know it took a lot of heavy lifting, and I'm very grateful for the work that's been done. And belatedly, I wanted to express my appreciation to the chair and the vice chair for their personal messages of support for board members during the Thanksgiving season. We got individual calls of thanks. That was very impactful and appreciated. And I think looking back over the year and starting a new one, I think the most impactful thing besides CAMS was to really read and internalize the stories that come to us from every case, that they're not just quote unquote cases, but they're instances of real life hardship that impact the lives of Californians throughout the state. And I think that that's always something that I will remember from the past year and the year before, and try to incorporate the sensitivity and realize the important mission that we have in alleviating that suffering. Thank you.
Member Wachowski.
I too report that I experienced the CAMS training session in Oakland, and I would join in Vice Chair Kent Monning's appreciation for how well the team was executed. It's one thing to get the reports each month that this field office is experiencing this, but to see them on the ground, it was quite impressive. And I also appreciate the chance to see some of the field office ALJs, to actually meet them. We're pretty much online all the time, and sometimes we don't even comment on the decisions that they have made, just reversing them, or no, just agreeing with them. So you have that. This is my first year. This is the end of my first year. I was appointed last January, and I was just looking at, when I came on, we had 146,000 plus cases, and now in this year we're down to 78,000 cases. I attribute none of that reduction to my efforts here on the appeals board, but just note that the agency has, as the chair indicated, is shrinking the amount of open cases there, which provides a level of justice and certainty to members. They get the decision that they are seeking when they file their appeal. So I look forward to paying close attention as the CAMS training team goes into the tax realm board and see how that administration works out. So that's it.
Thank you. I would note that many of the remarks of the members and myself speak to gratitude and appreciation. And I think those are very important factors when we're doing the kind of work we do. And we also appreciate the circumstances that for the folks that come before us, the claimants, the employers with their challenges, and knowing that it's a complicated system and sometimes it's befuddling as to what their rights are and what needs to be adjudicated. So I don't think we can ever basically here as board members fully appreciate that everything that's done in the agency, other than the vague sensation that things are being done right and appropriately, and that people are doing a great job at all the levels of the organization. And and so it's, to me, I've been with organizations at all levels of functionality, and I'm very pleased with the functioning of this agency. I'll just leave it at that. And having said that, let's move on to the public comment.
Mary Allen, I have no hands raised for public comment at this time.
Thank you. Having no public comment, we'll proceed to hear the report of our Executive Director, Chief ALJ, Michael Kutry. Michael, I know you're here remotely with us, so go ahead with your report.
Sure. And can you hear me okay?
Yes.
We can hear you well.
Thank you. Good morning, Chair Allen and board members. I typically begin with a field office update for workload and timeliness. I just want to extend my appreciation to your comments about the progress that the field has made. You mentioned some of the numbers that are relevant to that progress. It's not by accident. This consistent effort by the field offices has resulted in us disposing over 30,000 cases per month in 8 to 12 months in the past year. So I also would like to take a moment to thank the field offices for all their hard work. December was a traditionally slow month for our appeals dispositions, but we still managed to reduce the open inventory by over 4,800 cases. The offices have hired many new judges and staff over the past 3 years. And that hiring, at least in terms of judges, is coming to a close in our last cohort. We have all of our contingent of judges producing at maximum capacity at the current time. And so we do think we are well positioned to take the momentum from the last year into the current year as we attempt to resolve the backlog of approximately 78,000 cases remaining in unemployment and pandemic appeals. CAMS has finally allowed us to normalize wait times, but the average case age still remains high at 138 days. The national appeal agencies are still reporting a struggle with their deferred appeals workload with an average case age of over 230 days. We do expect with the momentum that we bring into 2024 that we will be able to significantly reduce that case aging in the coming months. Of course, as mentioned by the members, behind the mountain of work brought on by the pandemic in 2023, CAMS went on relatively uninterrupted. I would like to take a moment to specifically thank the CAMS field office training and support team. Of course, it was led by Assistant Chief Hugh Harrison, who has devoted the vast majority of his past 3 years to revolutionizing the system for our agency. It was also supported by a lot of other individuals bringing decades of experience to the table in terms of field office training for staff and judges. Martha Arsolana, Martha Diaz, John Zinto, Melissa Benson, Alfredo Garcia, Mireya Aguirre, as well as retired annuitants Renee Irwin and Joyce Bernatsky, were all at various times deeply involved in the training and development of the product for the field. Over the past 18 months, the entire team balanced their already significant job duties with traveling to all 11 field offices for training and support. I don't doubt that without their commitment and dedication to the agency and its mission, the project's success would not have been possible. But now they have a well-deserved break as they prepare for the Office of Tax Petitions in the spring. The Office of Tax Petitions operates a lot differently than our field offices, so we have a little bit of retooling to do before we roll that in. But the good news is that office can continue to produce uninterrupted in the meantime. Of course, in 2024, the work in CAMS continues. Throughout the project, and maybe now more than ever, the IT team continues to work tirelessly on many behind-the-scenes functional enhancements items, many of which are brought to you on a regular basis, including the ones mentioned by Vice Chair Cantillon a short time ago. So we look forward to updating the board and the field offices with our ongoing process in the months ahead. Looking ahead, in the first half of 2024, we have several scheduled events with the U.S. Department of Labor. Most notably, they are resuming their every 3-year quality review conference, which has not actually occurred since 2018. So that happens in Washington, D.C., and we'll be sending a pair of our most accomplished quality review scores to that effort. It's an effort where the states all get together and score each other's quality review efforts for the week, and then come back to report all of the updates and progress that's been accomplished during the week and in accordance with DOL's regular monitoring program. We also have the National Conference of Unemployment Appeals Professionals in the first half of this year, and I look forward to providing updates on both of those events as well as other less seldom scheduled events with the U.S. Department of Labor and EDD. On the topic of security, I have no events to report, and we had no office closure since the last meeting. So with that, I will conclude my report, and I'm happy to take any questions.
Thank you, Judge Kutry. Do any of the members have any questions of our Chief Executive Officer? Yes, Member Wachowski.
If you could help me, Chief Executive Officer Kutry, now that all the field offices are on CAMS, I'm looking at the cycle of time summary that we get each year and each step of the process. And I'm wondering if you could enlighten me on how might, for instance, the Sacramento office, the case creation date to verify is 117 days, which is different from Orange County, which is 22 days. But then places like the average case age in Oakland or the Bay Area is 282 days with 158 days from that verification date to the scheduled date. How does the CAM system, as it's integrated, how might you direct the field offices or the flow of work so those things average out? I guess that's the question. Are we going to see an averaging out as cases move, or how is it possible that they're going to achieve that?
At the last meeting, I reported that we had moved just over 15,000 cases between meetings to help streamline that effort. So we moved cases that had not yet been finalized to offices that could finalize them, and then we moved cases to offices where they had more judges who could hear them faster. December is probably a mix-up of all of those combined factors. So we were actively moving cases during the December time period to minimize some of these. So we're moving older cases from one office to another office, and using Sacramento as the example, their usual case creation date is much lower than that, but they received a bulk of work from another office to assist them. So that number went up. And then we would expect that as we monitor this weekly, that those numbers will start to normalize. And so everybody sort of shares the pain of the incoming new appeals and helping register them, as well as offices that are scheduling hearings much quicker will get more cases to schedule and take their place. So I will expect that all of those numbers in those categories will start to normalize as 2024 continues.
Thank you.
Member Ng?
Thank you, Mr. Allen. Again, I've been here almost 6 years, a little over, I think starting my 6th year, and seeing what we were before and how CAMS has really revolutionized how we interface at every level with all of the stakeholders. It's just been phenomenal. So if I were to ask, like, what would be the strategic goal last year, it would be to roll out CAMS to all of the offices, and to master all of the challenges, especially the technology. And if I were to ask that for this coming year, other than the completion of the tax cases, what do you think the strategic goals or goal might be for the coming year, and should the board play a role, if any, in those, other than to enjoy the fruits of the beautiful house?
Well, certainly our sights are set on continuing to reduce the backlog. That is the bottleneck for the public that our appellants are waiting for to happen. I do think we're well situated to continue our progress in that regard. In the background, we want to enhance the user experience for all of our parties and all of our judges and staff and the board in the CAMS project. So without the intensive field office rollouts, I think that we're going to get a lot more done more quickly. And hopefully both of those items will result in a measurable increase to the services we're able to provide.
Yeah, thank you. I just want to underline the my continuing request that that there be methodologies continuing. I know we already have one to measure the feedback of all of the participants in the CAMS, because I know certainly when board members participate and we have input, that's immediately taken care of. And so I think whatever can be done, whether it's surveys, whether it's soliciting feedback from advocacy groups, whatever, I'd like to kind of monetize that and see, not now, but see what we've come up with and how that is improving the experience of the claimants. Do they have complaints, or is everything fine? I know that there are issues of language, perhaps, as there always is, and I know we've made a lot of progress on that. Like to pay particular attention to that to see how to make sure that the due process is not lost in the translation, so to speak. But overall, I look forward to a tremendous year, probably even better than last year, because now we built the house and now we're going to make those improvements to make sure that we can all enjoy it. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Member Ng. Member Kentmani?
Just thank you, Chief Kutry, for your ongoing work. And it's nice to kind of reflect on last year and see, as you said, 8 out of 12 months, over 30,000 cases. It's a tremendous amount of work being done, all the while the whole of 2023 had offices offline with cases trying to get online with CAMs. So I'm hopeful that 2024, with all of us on CAMs, we'll continue to see tracking in the right direction to reduce that backlog. So I think our strategic goal is the right one, and I look forward to seeing how we can do that as best we can. Thank you.
Thank you. I do have a couple of questions, and I guess they're in the nature of previews of coming attractions is where I've kind of put these questions. I think most of you know that my law practice of almost 50 years has been conflict resolution, and a lot of my work has been in collective bargaining and resolving disputes and mediation, that sort of thing. So without getting into the substance of what normally would be discussed in a closed session regarding negotiations, could you at least give the board an idea of which bargaining units are coming up for negotiation, like a time schedule, and when we might start getting reports regarding that?
That's not a question I had prepared an answer for today. I might know offhand, but I don't want to get it wrong.
Okay.
So if
That's
I may
fine.
defer that to provide that information to you between meetings, or certainly I'm happy to bring it up.
Yeah, just to be clear as to when the contracts are expiring and when negotiations begin. No more detail than that. And this is proof positive to the public that we do not choreograph these meetings, because I did not mean to catch you off guard. So let's move the agenda, and thank you. Let's see here. Well, Judge Bach, I promise not to ask you any questions that you're not prepared to answer today. But I do want to thank you so much for your troubleshooting and your help, and you're always helping both our judges and ourselves with very difficult questions. And we've talked about appreciation today, but I do want you to know that I really do appreciate the work that you do to help the board members with these cases, and also to forgive certain board members who get ahead of themselves and start doing cases early in the morning before everyone else. So I want to thank you for that. So why don't we hear your report?
Thank you very much, and Happy New Year, and happy birthday.
Oh, thank you.
Okay, for my report, our goal at Appellate Operations is to close 50% of our cases in 45 days and 80% of our cases in 75 days. For the month of December, we closed 21.2% in 45 days and 36.6% in the 75 days. So that leaves us for the Department of Labor year thus far, which ends at the end of March, at 44.3% for 45 days, 67.9% for the 75 days, still in striking distance. And I think another number we look at every month is the case aging. Our goal is 40 days, and we're at 82.6. And so, like I was saying last month, we're peaking, I think. I think we've now peaked. I suspect the report on the case aging will be a little bit different next month. But also, I think for the month of December, what these numbers, good as they are, don't reflect is a lot of good work that was done, closing out some of the ending pandemic unemployment cases, closing out some disability cases, and we're back to closing out tax cases, right, which is time consuming. In addition, these numbers don't reflect the good work that has been happening in transitioning all the judges in appellate operations over to CAMs, and which takes a lot of training, obviously, and the transition I mentioned last time about cross training. Yeah. So, given all of those factors, to use Member Ng's term, I think we're going to start seeing the fruit of our labors very soon. And then that's my report. I'm happy for questions.
I have one question. Thank you, S.J. Bach. I'm trying to think, do we have AO-ALJs who are still going to be trained in CAMS? I know we're still every day now using two systems. But has everyone been trained, or we still have a couple who will take that?
Yeah, we have, so all of the permanent full-time judges from appellate operations, except one, has been trained and is working exclusively in CAMS. One we kept out of CAMS to close out legacy. Then we have the two, and the new cross-training persons in exclusively CAMS. We have two cross-training on loan individuals who are being trained in CAMS within this next week. One on Thursday, one beginning of next week. And then that will leave retired annuitants and the one permanent full-time.
Well, I just want to thank you for managing all of that. It's a lot of, kind of puzzle piecing together to make sure that we're able to continue the workflow. And I know now the board members, we use both systems every day, which we started out kind of slowly with CAMS, making sure that we could handle it. And now I think we're all very comfortable with both platforms. So hopefully that continues to expedite the number of cases we're able to work on per week. But thank you for monitoring all of that, and appreciate it.
No, I appreciate. Thank you very much. I appreciate that.
No, and just to comment, besides having the new system CAMS, I was just thinking of the fact that when this huge amount of need came forward from the public with the pandemic, all this law was created on the fly. And all this law was first impression, things that had to be worked through. Some of it was hoping that we were creating the right precedents, the right interpretation of what they were putting out in Washington, D.C. But that also contributed to the workload, because a lot of it wasn't dealing with established precedent. It was establishing new law and new interpretations of very fresh legislation that had come out of Washington. So it just occurred to me that was another huge factor in our workload. Yes. So, Member Ng or Member Wachowski, any questions?
Yeah, I just wanted to issue a comment. I wanted to give Judge Bach a shout out because I was absolutely lost without you this past week. I'm kidding. But on the converse, I would like to say that you handled my first training. I think it started off in this room when I knew absolutely nothing about unemployment insurance, and gave me a 3-ring binder, which I still have to this day with notes. Now I've started a new binder, and it's rather unorganized, and it's on CAMS. And I'm going to thank you for all of the lessons that you've imparted, perhaps some of it case by case and member by member, but hopefully there is now a CAMS training manual. I think I saw part of it when we started CAMS, but I don't know if I would like to, maybe a few months after things have started, I'd like to maybe have a refresher course to make sure that I'm clicking the right box, and if I learned it wrong, I'd be clicking the wrong box in perpetuity. But that would be helpful to make sure that I have benefited from the great questions that my colleagues have probably asked, but have not necessarily been part of those cases. My second kudos to you and continuing request is that thank you for being open to looking at the actual documents that are actually received by the parties to make sure that they are clear and that we're clear in what they say, and I appreciate that. And also the fact that we're seeing many, many cases that are continuing replays of certain fact situations. I really appreciate the attempt to have standard paragraphs, because when a new member or a member that hasn't had a case like that before, or a new AO or whatever might have sees that's actually been litigated before, but we've never quite articulated them, those standard paragraphs really do help. And so I think continuing that is a really important best practices, and continuing to look at the documents to make sure that when we make those critical decisions, that it's based on language that is clear and unambiguous as much as possible. Thank you.
Thank you, Member Ng. I've made a note
I
of.
always feel horror when I see people taking notes, because I think, my God, I've just created 4 hours of homework for them after the meeting. But hopefully you were just doodling and not writing what I was saying down.
Well, Member Ng has amazing grace. He was lost and now he's found. So, Member Wachowski, any questions?
I don't have any questions. There's been a shower of praise of the appellate, the assistance you've provided, and you do that on a daily basis, and I'm appreciative.
Yeah.
And I'm particularly as Vice Chair Monning, that streamlining so that we could do more work going forward. It's just, I can't tell you how grateful I am of those efforts you've made.
But, just one other comment, and it's been discussed at other board meetings recently and in the far past. There's always been a commitment here to try to get these cases right. And many eyes look at these cases. There's a lot of conferring and double checking. And I just hope that the public is assured and our staff that many eyes look at this, and there's always the ethos of trying to get these cases right. And that's what we're here for. So having said that, we'll move the agenda. We will hear from our IT Director and from Chief Information Officer, Mr. Willoughby, Jefferson Willoughby, to be exact.
Good morning, Chair Allen, members of the board. Well, we've touched on so many things already that are included in my report, so I'll hit the high points and try to be brief. As was mentioned, we did onboard our last field office in December, which is a huge milestone from an IT perspective. It doesn't mean that the work stops by any stretch of the imagination. Our Office of Tax Appeals, as mentioned, is right behind us. We're also working on some pretty large-scale enhancements. So we talk a lot about the usability of the system, how easy it is, and which checkboxes get checked at a particular time. That's important to us. We relish the feedback that we get. So the usability portion of the system is a constant and continuous improvement model that we will try and make the system easier to use and more efficient over time. I really want to thank the board and senior staff, the ALJs in the field and the staff members who work in the system every day, and of course the subject matter experts who have done an amazing job of informing IT on business process. And of course, they constitute a pretty good swath of our training team as well. We couldn't give you the product that you see today without really understanding the business process behind it. And that partnership is a continuum that we're going to continue to sort of flex that muscle, and we're going to listen to the business, try to produce something that's much better for you to use going forward. We have many things queued up right now. I'm happy to take questions on any or all of them by the end of this month. Spanish will be in the portal. I will say that there was some, I talked previously about a contextual catalog of what does it mean when I'm looking at something on a screen when I'm asking a particular question or I'm in a particular state as an appellant. It matters. A verbatim translation we found doesn't always capture the essence of what you're trying to get across. So we have revamped that, and we should be receiving that back from the translators. We're all aflutter with anticipation to get that back and get it rolled out. So we're targeting the last week in January to press the button on that to say go. The other languages are in that contextual catalog, revamping at this point to make sure that we say what we mean to say, and we'll get those out as quickly as we can as well. So,
Language is so difficult. It really is, I mean.
it is, and if it were, Google Translate easy, we would have had this done many moons ago, but we want to make sure that it's correct and that it's meaningful to the people who are using it in the right way. So that's where we sit today with that. So I'm happy to take any other questions. We've touched on almost every other thing that I wanted to talk about today. So thank you for that.
Well, that's good. Any questions of board members?
Just a comment.
Yeah, sure. Sure.
Thank you, Chief Willoughby. To touch on something that you mentioned, I just appreciate the positive attitude that I've received from any person in the IT department when I've worked on some user interface for board and have worked with S.J. Bach, and I know everyone has long lists in your department, and that has never come through in terms of just willingness to have a meeting or to dive into these things in the weeds. And I am certain that there could be a lot of fatigue and things like that. So I just wanted to highlight that this is potentially years of ongoing work that is this partnership of the substantive work and then how we make the technology work for that. And it's really nice to see all these folks working together, but the positivity and the willingness to have a meeting and talk through things in the weeds has been really impressive to me. So I just wanted to share that feedback about your team and hope that it can stay that way, because I know there's a lot of work and long lists, but it really does make a difference to know that everyone cares about it. You can tell, and that's been wonderful. So thank you.
Yes, thank you, Chief Willoughby. I remember when CAMS first rolled out, we were given these exercises on to go to the website and look how far we've come. I have a question I think directed to Chief Kuchar earlier, but and I'm really serious about this. What do you think the board's role should be in this coming year with regard to CAMS? I'm not trying to be facetious. I'm saying that the board role appears to me that when we interface with a case and there's an issue, perhaps to the technology, we say something and it's like, for example, I couldn't get on, I couldn't log on, so I called the help desk. But other than giving feedback at the meetings, do you envision more of a role that we could play now that we've gone through CAMS? And by that I mean a meaningful, important role that would really help. I know that a lot of the big decisions are really made outside of this room. For example, the decision to hire, IT, a whole IT team was just an ingenious decision, and it had to be done, and it's borne tremendous rebates and fruits. But seriously, what type of feedback can we give that really would be meaningful now that we've gotten into CAMS and, I say that last year's case were called a legacy. They're legacy cases. Well, CAMS cases will become legacy in the next generation when something new comes. And so what I want to make sure is that there is a legacy, that the board gave, important, useful feedback that really could help make this work. Or maybe it already has been. If so, I have an hour for you to tell us how good we've been. Seriously, how can we be more effective in our feedback?
Well, you've mentioned what we need. What we need is feedback. If there is something that is confusing, unconstructive to appear on a page, doesn't work the way that you think that it might, our cycle of continuous improvement relies on that feedback. So from an IT perspective, we do rely on you. And I think Vice Chair Kanmani did mention that some of the board discussion pages have improved markedly recently, and we want to continue that. This is not a thing where we stop just because it's rolled out. What we do now is we go back and we will look at ways to make the business process as efficient as possible. We're a lever that gets pulled, right? IT is a way to get decisions done. So from our perspective, if you see something, tell us. If something doesn't seem like it makes sense to appear in a particular spot, or you want a feature that you don't currently see, there is a nexus here. And I'll tell you, in years past, IT used to just build some stuff, right? We would build it ourselves, and we're taking ourselves sort of out of that realm today. When you build it, you know exactly what it's capable of. You know that, yes, I can put a button there, or I can make a button go away in another place. We're in a different system now that has certain constraints around it. We're learning as we go to some extent, but without that feedback, we can't even make the investigation happen. So keep talking to us. If you use the little red help button to say, I don't understand how this works, somebody's going to reach out to you, or you can email me directly, or our applications developer manager, or one of the analysts if you'd like to. But in any case, the board is representative of getting a significant number of cases and work out. We want to make sure that what you do is as easily done and as accurately done as we can possibly make it. So my door is open. You can send me an email anytime. And really, our job is to make your job as easy as it can possibly be. So that feedback loop is really, really important.
Well, thank you. I'm going to conclude by just saying thank you for that. And I do know that sometimes there's a discovery of a shortcut or something that can do this. If those somehow could be passed on to the other members too, then we won't make the same mistake repeatedly. But thank you. Appreciate all that you've done.
Mr. Chair, I have no information technology feedback at this time, but I will keep my eye open for those levers that I may pull to help the board going forward.
And I just comment that, I think generally speaking that the board is here to facilitate the success of the agency and all the various levels of the agency. And to be open, I know personally, and I think all the board members are like this, if I'm contacted with a question or a concern, you usually get an answer the same day. You don't have to wait. And I don't believe in an open door policy. I believe in a completely, hey, it's a, we don't have doors here. You talk and have input. And I think all the board members feel that way. And just speaking as someone who's been on countless boards, I'm devoted to the success of the organization that I'm serving with. And because ultimately, if we succeed, we're succeeding for the people of California. It's that simple, but it's also a day-to-day thing. And so I think it's always good to, and I think the board members are good about this, but in general, I know in my life experience, sometimes you just have to encourage people. They don't want to be the one to ask questions. I just recently had a situation where nobody wanted to ask the question that needed to be asked in a room, and so I had to be the designated person out of 50 to say, I have a question. And then everybody in the elevator said, I'm glad you'd ask that question. Well, sometimes you have those situations in life, right? So we're here for the public. We're here for our employees. We're here for each other. And I was going to save this for my concluding remarks, but I've served with so many board members, and I'm not going to throw shade on past board members because they've been great colleagues. But I think the present board we have is wonderful. I think you guys are great, and you're supportive of one another, and you're doing the work. And we don't always agree on cases, but when we don't, we're not here for groupthink. We're here to give our best judgment, and that's what we do. So, in public, I'll thank you today because I think you're doing a great job, and thank you. Let's move on. With that, we'll take. We've now had the Chief Information Officer, Mr. Silva, who always has interesting information for us. Will now give his report.
Thank you, Chair Allen. Good morning, board members. I will start with a hiring update. Since the last board meeting, we have brought aboard 5 new support staff employees in the record control areas of the Fresno, Sacramento, and San Jose offices of appeals, which is great news. We do still have 22 recruitments pending, but we've discussed this at previous meetings. It's just a constant recruitment for these positions in particularly field operations. Many of the final filing dates for the pending recruitments were in late November. So with the holiday season and the staff leave that kind of accompanies that now behind us, we'd like to see some of these additional hires come aboard. We do have two that have been offered conditional job offers that are in the name clearance process, so we hope to have them aboard quite soon. Moving on to an annual report that we do. I do most of it, but IT helps. It's an IT cost reporting responsibility that all agencies are required to submit to the California Department of Technology each year. It's essentially, it categorically summarizes all actual IT expenditure information from the previous state fiscal year, as well as what we project to purchase in the current fiscal year. We just completed the report last week, and Sonia, our information security officer, now has it in her hot hands for final signature, which would be well ahead of the February 1st due date. I haven't reported on COVID-19 in recent months, but I do have a significant update with regard to COVID-19. Last week, on January 9th, the California Department of Public Health updated its COVID-19 isolation and testing guidance. Those changes impacted Cal OSHA's COVID-19 prevention non-emergency standards with respect to isolation from the workplace. The key changes impacting the workplace include an updated definition of the infectious period when someone contracts COVID-19. The previous definition of the infectious period was from 2 days before someone first develops symptoms. That period, infectious period, is now defined as a minimum of 24 hours from the day of symptom onset. So that is a significant change. Previously, if someone had COVID-19, employees could return to the workplace 10 days after the initial onset of symptoms, provided they had been fever-free for the preceding 24 hours without the use of fever-reducing medication, and symptoms were mild and improving. They were able to return to the workplace earlier after day 5 if they could provide a negative test result. With Cal OSHA's non-emergency standards now state that a symptomatic employee that is tested positive for COVID-19 can return to the workplace if 24 hours have passed with no fever, again, without the use of medication, and if symptoms are mild and improving. So it's a significant change. The new standards further state that for COVID-19 cases with no symptoms, there is no infectious period for the purpose of isolation from the workplace. And so employees in that situation do not need to be excluded and can report to the workplace. However, if symptoms do develop, the 24-hour criteria I just described then would apply to them. And lastly, I wanted to go back to what we briefly discussed last board meeting when we had just announced that the Department of Finance had issued budget letter 2327 that detailed a current year expenditure freeze for all state departments, and that at the time we were in the initial phase of kind of unpacking what that meant for us. Shortly thereafter, the EDD's Business Operations Services Division, which is where we essentially procure everything, developed and distributed a budget letter attestation document that will be required for all requests for operating equipment and supplies, as well as contract requests. We have distributed updated process changes to all CUIAB management, and a member of the executive management team will be completing this attestation form for all submitted procurement requests for the remainder of the fiscal year to ensure that the requests adhere to the budget letter. Essentially, we want to make sure that the purchases avoid interruption of enterprise operations and or are for mission-critical, time-sensitive operations need. As you'll recall from last month's meeting, the directive also extended into travel and training. Firstly, with regard to travel, the EDD's travel unit issued a communication that essentially said that their travel analysts would not be scrutinizing reimbursement requests, and that they placed the onus on the traveler and, of course, the approving manager to ensure that any travel is in compliance with the budget letter. This isn't terribly impactful to our operations in that IT and administrative services, we only travel to CUIB facilities for business need. For the most part, field operations travel is for ALJs traveling to outstations to do necessary in-person hearings. I will say one area where it is impactful is with the continuing need for travel for CAMS, rollout, and follow-up support. Obviously, we have the Office of Tax Petitions we're still going to roll out. And the CAMS team has been advised, to the extent possible, to reduce the amount of travelers when required in-person training has to be done, and also to utilize Teams or Zoom to provide support remotely when at all possible for follow-up CAMS training for offices that have come aboard into the system. And with regard to training, we have also advised management to review any training requests pending to ensure that they are mission critical, and our training unit has been advised to act as a kind of a secondary level of review of those requests. There is obviously some mandated training that we must do, and so we will move forward with those even when there's a cost. For instance, leadership training, when there's a cost involved, we will go forward with those because we're mandated to do so. And that is the end of my report. I'm happy to take any
Let's
questions.
see if board members have questions. Vice Chair?
Thank you, Chief Silva, for that. Obviously, you've done a lot of work between the last board meeting and today digesting that budget letter in particular. So I appreciate you giving us the succinct breakdown of all the changing COVID protocols and then the budget letter. I guess it sounds like from the highlights that you're telling us of the budget letter that we are in a pretty fine position to continue on as we typically have done, but I just wanted to maybe understand in plain language if there's certain aspects of what we typically do that are going to be more impacted by this.
I honestly, for the most part, don't think so. They're at a very granular level. There are requests that are coming in from field operations for office supplies, and they're being scrutinized and reduced when needed. But that's such a tiny part of what we're discussing. No office is going to be left without everything that they need to continue our operations. And I think I mentioned during our last meeting, our contract requests all adhere to the budget letter. IT services as well, which Jefferson is working on. So I really don't see this having a tremendous impact. Where it could, from a personal employee standpoint, is training. There are trainings that we are simply going to have to cancel because they're not an immediate business need.
And are those typically more the outsourced trainings, not the in-house training?
Yes, it would be all
Okay.
outsource at-cost training that I'm
Right.
referring to. Yes.
Okay, thank you.
Ring, any questions?
Yes, thank you, Chief Silva. I had a couple questions. One on the, as we all know, COVID, flu, and RSVs are picking up. I'm a little concerned because I'm not sure I understand. Is the issue of isolation and or not reporting to work tied to symptoms and not to testing?
It's tied to symptoms, that is correct. It's if
So if you test positive but you don't have symptoms, you still report to work?
that is what the news guidelines state, yes.
I'd like to see a copy of that because that seems rather, is that the new guidelines from the feds or
From CalOSHA,
from?
from California Department of Public Health.
I don't see that being the same as the guidelines from them. But anyway, if I could see that. So in other words, if I go home and test positive tonight, but I have no symptoms, there's no isolation and reporting to work as usual?
That's what the new standards say, yes.
And if the symptoms start coming out during the work period, what does that say?
Then you would that would be considered the infectious period, and you would be excluded from the workplace for 24 hours after the day in which those symptoms started, and you would not be able to return to the workplace until you were fever-free for a preceding 24 hours, and those symptoms were resolving,
Okay.
essentially.
Test positive, no symptoms, no mask?
Oh, I didn't get into that, I apologize. The masking, there was no change in masking requirements with the update to the standards. So the masking requirements would be that if you are symptomatic and you would have to, and you report to the workplace, say, after 24 hours with the new standard, you would have to wear a mask indoors in the workplace for 10 days following the onset of symptoms. If you're asymptomatic, it would be, you would have to wear a mask in the workplace for 10 days following the first positive test result.
I take it this will be communicated to the field offices and
Yes, we're, like with the last meeting and the expenditure freeze, we're trying to unpack this now for, obviously, for the reasons that you've stated. And I've reached out to my coordination people over at EDD to see if they were going to issue an encompassing communication, but that was last week, and it doesn't seem as if, they were a little coy about doing it. So if we can't piggyback on their communication, we're going to issue one ourselves internally.
could I ask for a copy sent to the board as well, the newest regulation? That seems
Absolutely.
interesting.
Bob, just have it sent to all board members, this particular issue. Sometimes when we request documents, it should go to all board members. Sometimes it's very idiosyncratic for one small issue. But for this issue, it should go to all board members.
Thank you, appreciate that, Mr. Chair. And my final question is, to be clear, there have been no talk of any furloughs. There's no talk of anything like that. And as you know, we've been not able to fill all requests for our staff, our support staff at the field offices. And you're saying that that won't be effective because we'll be just as unable to fill those positions now as we did before any kind of budgetary scrutiny, or?
Yeah, for now, there is no chatter about whether it's a hiring freeze or whether it's the personal leave program, or obviously that's furloughs. So that there's been no discussion that that's going to become a reality. We are operating currently with the data that was included in the January budget, which is from our October revise. Essentially, as we enter next fiscal year, we will have about the same staffing level as the current fiscal year, authority, excuse me.
Challenge now with recruit positions where people know what our budget. And finally, could you state what we're saying is the budget shortfall? Is it 60-some billion or 30-something?
68 billion, I think was what
I'm
it
sorry?
was. 68 billion?
Not the 38 billion, it's the 68 billion.
It was
that we're-
68 billion when the budget letter was issued last month.
We're discussing the state budget at the moment.
Yeah, the state
Right,
budget.
not the
Yeah.
agency budget.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, the agency
Yeah.
budget.
Just to clarify, just to clarify.
Thank you. Yeah, that's what was included in the budget letter last month. Yes, that was the figure.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. No further questions. Thank you.
Member Wachowski.
Very good questions, remember, on the COVID. So let me see if I got this right. I test positive. I have no symptoms. I go to work for 10 days and I wear a mask. True or false?
According to the new updated standards, true.
Right. I got it. Thank you.
Well, I would ask now that of our board council, do we have any matters for discussion in closed session?
Thank you, Chair Allen. We do not.
Do not. Well, with that, then I'm going to declare the session concluded and we are adjourned. Thank you.